Thank you. All right, I call to order the Monday, March 13th, 2023 meeting of the Cumberland Town Council. Prior to this, we did have a workshop with the Lands and Conservation Commission, and it is always just humbling and awe-inspiring when we meet with them and the work they have accomplished, and the plan of attack they have for the future. So appreciate all of the work that group does. First order of business is the approval of minutes from February 27th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the minutes? All those in favor? Thank you. Next is our manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually looking for Steve Moriarty. Have you seen him? No, I have not seen him either, so 27? Okay.
Yeah, not this one.
I'll jump right then to Chief Rumsey and ask him to come forward. He has some information for the council and the public tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, Madam Chair, councilors, nice to see you. Appreciate you giving me a few minutes tonight so that we can swear in a couple of folks, one that's relatively new to the organization and one that was recently promoted. So to kick off the event, I would ask Officer Kluge to come on up. If you would, Tony, stand right here. And then just beam out at everyone. So we had this patrol position open for quite a while, and you've probably heard around the nation, police departments aren't getting the number and quality of candidates that we used to. And so we were getting a little concerned about filling this position, but certainly we're not going to take less than the best to fill out our ranks. So we're getting a little discouraged, and then one day the sun shined down and the clouds parted, and Tony descended and came in and filled out a job application. So Tony is
Please pause for mental image.
Tony is a 24-year law enforcement veteran. He served his career down at the Kennebunk Police Department and reached retirement age and was looking for something to do for a while longer. He's a relatively young guy, fit, still has a lot of energy, very passionate about the profession, and so came in to see if we would like to have him on the team, which we were very excited to discuss with him. 24 years in Kennebunk. During that time, he certainly wasn't just treading water. He spent about 15 years as the program coordinator for the department's field training officer program, which is a very important function. He spent 16 of his years there as a sergeant and spent 18 years on the honor guard. So when the folks here in Cumberland that did his field training were doing his field training, they were all having a good laugh because he has spent so many years training police officers. It was basically showing him his way around town and introducing him to a bunch of people. So when I got to look at his background, we go to a prospective, go to the department of a prospective employee, photocopy their entire personnel file, and then I get to read through the whole thing. And Tony's is like a phone book, and most of it is letters from citizens about what a great job he did on something or how much they appreciated the efforts that he took on their behalf. And then some we'll call them good boy letters from the chiefs and some performance evaluations. And I thought, well, that's really nice, and maybe people in Kennebunk just really get it, and like we'll see how things go when Tony gets here. So I don't even think Tony's seen this, but he's been here for just a touch over a month now. And what do I have waiting for me when I come into work this morning but a compliment that was left in writing for to me about Tony. Says, I thanked the officer, but I know he's new to Cumberland, and I wanted the chief to know what a great addition he is to the force. He was thorough, kind, and considerate, and I appreciated his help. So Tony went out and handled a call for someone in town that took the time. They were so impressed to come all the way into the police department and write that note out for us. So I think that says a little something about the community mind that Tony approaches his work with, and so you probably know why we are very excited to have him. So without further ado, I will ask Angela to come in and administer his oath of office.
Have you raised your right hand? You, Anthony Kluge, do swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state, so as long as you shall continue a citizen thereof, so help you God.
I do.
You, Anthony Kluge, do swear that you will faithfully discharge to the best of your abilities the duties incumbent on you as Cumberland Police Officer according to the Constitution and laws of the state. So help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. So pinning Tony's badge on tonight is his wife Amy, and daughters are welcome to come up if they want to.
Be on TV, so
Yeah, come on up and be on TV. Look at that. Nice job.
Yes, welcome. Thank you.
And next is a badge pinning for a promotion. So Jake, if you would come on up, take Tony's spot in front of the podium there. Jake LaChance, who I know that you all know, is a 8-year veteran of law enforcement, has been with Cumberland for about the last 4.5 years. He spent 3.5 with the city of South Portland before coming to work with us. So when our captain, Dave Young, left us a couple of years ago, we decided what we were going to do is rotate some of our sergeants through the administrative section of the police department to kind of let them see whether they were interested in doing this job. Let me give them a little test drive to see how that would go for each of them. And at the end of that process, Jake was the one member of our staff that was really interested in doing the captain's job. So even though he was the one candidate that was internal that was interested in the job, we weren't simply going to give him the position. So we put him through the paces and did an entire full-blown promotional process just like we would do for anybody from outside. He had to come stand here in the council chambers and give a public presentation to I think about 25 or 30 people that showed up that day, ask questions. I tried to ask him some tough questions to rattle him. I couldn't rattle him, which was good. An essay test, and then an interview panel that was comprised of 2 command level officers from departments outside the area, and then 2 members of our community, because I think getting a community perspective on these matters is incredibly important. And Jake really rose and shined during that process. So for those of you that may not know much about Jake, he is a graduate of the College of the Holy Cross and has his BA in political science. He was a standout baseball player while he was at college, and currently is one of the Criminal Justice Academy's instructors for the mechanics of arrest, restraint, and control, also known as defensive tactics, or how to place somebody into arrest effectively with applying the minimal amount of force necessary. So in his new role as captain, Jake will be responsible for the day-to-day operations of the police department and will oversee our animal control officer, 2 sergeants, our school resource officer, and our detective. So without further ado, I would ask Angela to come back up and swear Jake into his new position as captain.
All right, raise your right hand. You, Jake LaChance, do swear you will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state, so as long as you shall continue a citizen thereof. So help you God.
I do.
You, Jake LaChance, do swear that you will faithfully discharge to the best of your abilities the duties incumbent on you as captain of the Cumberland Police Department according to the Constitution and laws of the state. So help you God.
I do.
Congratulations.
And pinning Jake's captain's badge on tonight is his mom, Susan LaChance. It took 1 second in practice. I just want everybody to know it took 1 second in practice. There you go.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Chair, the other item I have to report to the council tonight, the Shabik Transportation Service has reached out to me and asked if the council would have any objection to installing a couple of EV charging stations at the Shabik Island Transportation Lot on Route 1. I didn't think you would, but I said, we have a meeting Monday night, so let me ask. So I'm asking, is there any objection to installing those stations? Those are all on the CTC. That doesn't cost us anything. They do pay for the electricity used on that site as well. So to me, it's kind of a no harm, no foul, but I thought I'd bring it to you and ask your input.
Go for it.
Thumbs up.
They have their own meter,
Yes, they do.
and this is,
Yep. This is totally on them.
They gonna give out gas cards still?
They are.
All right.
I don't see any
All seeing
objection.
none, I'll just relay that back to them, that no objections, and we'll move forward.
Bill, would our residents that have the EVs be allowed to go down there?
You'd have to pay to park, so that would be
okay.
that would discourage you. It's a fairly expensive boat ride and parking fee to get over to Shabik from our lot. It's actually cheaper to go out of Portland than it is out of Cumberland.
Gotcha,
So,
thanks.
And then I guess the couple of last things, with the nor'easter tomorrow, it's kind of 50-50 what we're going to do here. If that band of snow comes as early as predicted, it may not be safe to open and get our employees home at night. So we're 6 o'clock tomorrow morning is when Chris Bolduc and I will be making the call, so stay tuned for that. We also hope to begin interviews in the next week or so, probably within the next 2 weeks. Brenda, myself, Thomas Bennett, and two of the library trustees are going to meet to look at filling the assistant director's position. We've had a robust amount of applicants apply, which is very impressive, over 16 so far. The application period closes this Friday. The great majority, I'd say almost all of the applicants have master's degrees in library services. So we're doing some of the right things here, and I'm really excited that we've got such qualified candidates. So more to come in the future, and I hope to have some very positive news for you as well soon. And our housing shortages here in Cumberland still are an issue. Our code officer reports that basically building is basically crept to nothing because there's nothing available right now. We've had the fewest building permits issued probably in the last 5 years, in the last 2 months. So things in Cumberland are slowing down, not because of a lack of a desire to be here, just because of the availability of lots. So I will keep you posted as that moves forward. And then finally, an interesting fact, I was kind of surprised at our workshop meeting from Mike Schwint, the chair of the Lands and Conservation Commission, reported that it takes over 17 million calories of food to feed the town of Cumberland. That's about 2,000 calories a day for the 8,500 people that live here. So I was pretty impressed with that, and I think that goes to Councilor Vale's initiative a few years ago to try to identify lands in Cumberland that if, in the event of something catastrophic happening, we could figure out a way to feed our community. So I think the LCC is on its way, and I think they're doing a great job. So kudos to that group. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for the manager or items?
Mr. Burr, you heard you might not be able to have to work tomorrow, so.
Take the day off.
Awesome.
I'm glad Dan is back.
Thank you. Next item is public discussion. Public discussion is for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Public discussion topics may be brought up again under new business for further council discussion. Is there anyone in our audience who would like to comment on something not on the agenda? Please.
Dan Burr, live on Middle Road. As most of you know, I work for Public Works. And it was on, I think it was February 28th. It was the wet, heavy snowstorm. I was plowing on Tuttle Road and came across this elderly gentleman who had slid off the road. And I figured maybe I could just put a little more salt down and maybe he could back out. And no, it didn't work that way. And I was reaching in my pocket to get my phone to look up Ron's number to give to the guy, and I turn around and here's Ron with his wrecker about 3 feet away from me. And probably from the time Ron stopped to the time he got the guy out, might have been 3 or 4 minutes. And the guy asked Ron what he owed him. Ron says, "Don't worry about it." And he says, "Do you want my AAA card?" He says, "Nope." He says, "Don't worry about it. Have a good evening." And off he went. And I just want to let people know that we still have people in Cumberland that put people over profit. And for that, I just wanted to acknowledge Ron and give him a big thanks.
Thank you.
It makes our job a lot easier when we don't have to plow around people that are waiting for a wrecker for hours, so, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Dan, that's kind. I just came along this, and I was coming back from the interstate, and the gentleman was kind of in a bad spot, and Dan had stopped with the town plow truck so that he didn't get run into. And it literally was effortless to pull him out, and he was an elderly gentleman, and he lives in with my mom, and he wanted to pay me, and I wouldn't take any money, and then he offered me his AAA card, which I don't take AAA, and I said, "Have a nice day." I said, "You're a Cumberland resident, it's on the house, have a good day," so, thank you, Dan, so. Yeah.
Madam Chair. You know, Ronnie, just, it's easy to blow it off, but I have to agree with Dan. You know, and those of us have watched you for a few years, and those of us watched you all life. You do a lot for this town, and it doesn't go unappreciated or unrecognized.
Thank you.
Clearly makes a difference. And Dan, I appreciate you coming and taking the time. This is definitely, I think we can all get caught up in kind of just moving to the next thing and not taking the time to recognize that something touched you and was important and what you saw and to acknowledge. So thank you, and thank you, Ron, for making that moment happen.
It's learned behavior. Ronnie's father and grandfather, who I knew his grandfather, and I know his father well too. So it's, and I'm sure that if we were to stand his son up here too, it wouldn't be much different. They all cut from the same piece of cloth, and so, anyways, the generations that have lived in this community and have, you know, leaned into the shovel and done their part, and so Ronnie is just an extension of his father and grandfather.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't speak for your father or your grandfather because I've only lived here for 10 years, but I think you are the bomb.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Next is legislation and policy 23-020 to consider and act on authorizing a purchase order for a new ambulance to be delivered in fiscal year '25. I'm going to invite Chief Small, but a couple things I just want to kind of ground everyone in, and I think you'll hit on this too, Chief, but that kind of, this is something we kind of continually have been putting money aside for, so this is kind of allocated and there are funds. Kind of, I think important to note is that no money, like we're not authorizing any money to be spent with this action. It is kind of authorizing the purchase order, and we would have the opportunity to kind of revisit as kind of each budgetary process over. I think the estimated, I think it says 2-year delivery time. So that would be revisited. Sorry if I took any thunder, but I thought those were two really important points just for everyone to ground in first. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Chief.
Thank you. So this is something that is in the vehicle capital improvements line, but we wanted to still come forward and say this is what the necessary vehicle is for us. It's replacing our 2013 truck, even though we have 3 ambulances. For all the details, we really only show 2 on the book. So we tried to initially do a 10-year rotation, but it's just not reasonable to be able to do that for a multitude of different reasons. But the truck that we're looking at is going to take 2 years to get here. So once we get the authorization, we'll have a committee put together that will go through and say, here's how the compartment should be designed, et cetera. A few changes that we're going to make is, and this, well, it's kind of a hard picture to see, but this is obviously our existing truck, which is an ambulance design. Most of the departments in our area are going away from that design and going to a pickup truck style. It's called the Type 1 style. We also, because of a lot of the concerns with diesel fuel, we're changing to a gasoline vehicle. We've checked with Ronnie. I've had a lot of good communication with Spencer at Public Works. He and Jason Kopp went out to the Braun Manufacturing Company for our last truck and had nothing but good things to say about them. But the one we have is gasoline. That's worked out very well. The truck will be four-wheel drive. We're going to try to rotate that with the existing truck that we have, but the trucks we have now have what they call on-spot change, which chains rather that just spin on the tires, and they don't do any good once you're in a tough spot in somebody's driveway. So the four-wheel drive will help with that, and again, that's pretty much a common theme around our mutual aid partners. One of the big things, and we started out with the truck that we have, is a stretcher lift. So one person can bring a stretcher right up to the truck, push one button, and it lifts the stretcher and everything right into the back of the ambulance. And the same, obviously, coming out at the hospital or just the stretcher by itself. This is a huge safety thing for us. And you talk about workers' comp. Fortunately, here we haven't had any back injuries from stretcher operations, but it could happen tomorrow. We don't have enough staff to be without any of it, and this is not an inexpensive component, but we have found that that's very much an unease thing. Gerald Croce is here tonight, our deputy, and he can, I'm sure, attest to a lot of calls where we've had more than a couple people show up, and it's just not because the call company isn't as robust in numbers, if you will, as it once was. We're depending more and more on the full-time two people we have on duty. So I'm hitting on that one because that's an extremely, extremely important part of this truck, will be to try to help prevent the injuries with that. Other than that, a lot of the equipment that's in our truck that's getting replaced will be going right in to this one. So there is a stretcher, but that will come out of our equipment CIP line, so that's not included with this price. And again, if we, once we get authorization to sign the contract with the company, and Ron, I was told you're all right with a Ford, but a Ford is 2 years, a Chevrolet is 2.5, and a Dodge is 3 years. So I don't see him. Jason said it was okay, but that's where we're at with what we're proposing. And again, that's a very common theme now for mutual aid. And again, Spencer was good with that. And again, as you see here, $425 is what the cost of the trucks are. Chris Bolduc was buying ambulances a long time ago, and we said, $200,000 probably should cover it. Well, that ship has set sail a long time ago. This is crazy money, but it is what it is. This is just a quick change of view of what the truck is going to be going to. The one on the lower right is actually a truck from the town of Gray. There was a lot of the similar trucks that, again, it's good uniformity, so when we go mutual aid, we're not trying to figure out each other's trucks. This is the power lift system. Just a quick picture to show the stretcher comes out on its own. That one person can push the gear, the landing gear, if you will. The stretcher comes down, flicks one button, and then the stretcher comes right away. So you could put a person that weighs over 500 pounds on this, and one person could put him in the back of the truck. That's a huge value to be able to have to minimize the workers' comp. We need an ambulance, that's the price, but these are all the towns in our area of the state that have this similar or the same Braun Manufacturing Company. Braun's the one that we have now. They're been a company that, again, that Spencer's been very happy with, and certainly you see the other towns in the area that have the same interactions with the company there. We've switched companies a couple from the last ambulance, and we've had good success so far. So if anybody has any questions, it's an ambulance, it's four-wheel drive, and it's 425.
Chief, thanks for coming in tonight, and it's a good presentation. I understand your want for this ambulance. Can you tell me why you need it? I understand you want it, and it's the top of the line, I get it, but why do we need it?
Because there's a national rating system that talks about trucks. We used to go on the 10-year, we pushed it out to 12 years, and after that, the reliability of the trucks with technology is just not the same place. Again, we have a 2010 truck that we're using for a lot of the coverages at Twin Brooks, and those in the fair, those still are transport trucks. So we're not replacing that one. We're trading that one in, if you will, and then the 2013 will go down to that detail truck. With all the events that we have, quick examples, it's not uncommon that we've got something at Twin Brooks, harness racing, or something going on at the high school, and we get in trouble if one of those trucks is out of service. If our primary truck is out of service, obviously we have to have that one remaining in service. Then we have to go to having just a golf cart at the other events, which really cuts down our equipment to get somebody out of the heat or whatever it may be. But the truck, it's 13. It's going to be it's going to be 12 years old when it does get replaced, and it's one of those replace it before it absolutely needs to, because we know we want to keep it for those extra few years to be the detailed truck, if you will, that we have.
Just one quick one, Nelson. Do you have a need to keep this one? I mean, would it help if we had a third as a spare to use for events, or? I mean,
No.
I assume you're gonna trade this in or sell it, or whatever the heck we're gonna do with it.
It's confusing, but the 10-second version, if you will, is that we have a 2010 truck. That one will be going away. We'll get 10,000 trade, which is factored into that price, unfortunately. The 2013 truck will become then that oldest detailed truck that we'll have covering all the different events all around town. So it will stay, just kind of be that spare to the spare.
Great, thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Of course, go ahead, Shirley.
How many miles on the 2013 truck?
Great question. I'm not sure.
70,000.
Just curious. how many-
70,000.
How many?
70,000.
70,000.
And our newest truck that we have now is already coming up on that. That just tells you how much
It's
busier.
beyond that?
It's coming up to that number.
Wow.
Go ahead, Ron.
I commend you for going with what we call a cab and a chassis, Dan, because I think it's a smart move. I've done a little bit of homework. The cab and chassis, the Ford component of the truck, is roughly $64,000. The body's $361,000 at the $425,000. I would think it would be feasible 10 years from now to take that body off and put it on a new chassis. And I know a lot of companies do that. That doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but the truck is what's worn out, not the box on the back of it. With a cab and chassis, it literally is like 6 or 4 bolts that hold that body onto the frame, and it's possible to unbolt that and put it on a new chassis. So 10 years from now, that might be a feasibility thing, that you could just put a new chassis underneath the box. And I commend you for going with a gas over a diesel. And because of Dan Burr, I now drive a Ford. I've drove Chevys my whole life, and I now drive a Ford. And the Ford is a better chassis than the Chevrolet is when it comes to a commercial truck. It really is. So I commend you for that. The last question that I have, will this price be locked in after tonight, so that in 2 years from now, we won't have to pay for an inflated price?
That is correct, with the exception of the stretcher lift and the stretcher itself. There's a problem, a true problem going on where they are saying, well, we're gonna say your stretcher is $27,000. And, okay, where do I put that thing for a couple of years? And then you get it and like, oh, no, now it's 32,000. We talked about this and we're not sure, so Again, the stretch will come out of our CIP. Do we get it now and just put it in the back of the station so we can lock in? But like Bill said, what about the warranty? We have it, it sits in the corner for 2 years, and we wheel it out, and it's already out of warranty. So we got to look at those numbers to piece that part. And talking with Autotronics is the dealership. They've been actually buying some, and they've got a shelf in the back of their repair facility that they're keeping them on, just so their number that they've told us, they're able to hold to that. But that is the only thing that's kind of up in the air. But everything else, once we sign it, it's ours. For that price is ours.
Ron, we will not buy a stretcher and sit it in the corner for 2 years.
Right.
What we'll end up doing is, the chief will have to adjust his capital budget in that year to basically make up for any difference in that price that you authorize this evening. This is truly to get us in line. He's here about a year ahead of time than we normally have him. Usually it's about a year out before we ask you to lock this in, but the line is so backed up now. The chief came to me and said, look, we'll figure out all the intricacies of the cab while we wait, but we don't want to get further back, and by the time this comes, it's, things will change. My issue with what you said, Ron, is I'm just worried about, if we would even be able to do that with the changes in computer technology, with the changes in the electrical wiring of these instruments. They're pretty intense in what they put into them, but I think you're right. If we can do that, that would be great. And maybe that's only possible for the spare ambulance, but that's okay. That would definitely bring value, because trading these in is a waste of time. Even like we did with the ladder truck. When we went out to bid on the ladder truck to kind of the open market, we doubled what we expected to get. We expected to get 20, and I think we almost got 50 for it. So I think just going out and allowing other communities to bid on it versus going to a trader site where we trade it to a dealer and then they mark it up and try to sell it for us. I think we're better going out on the open market, just letting it go as is and letting folks look at it, because we've got all the records on it and it's worked so well, and Dan's done a nice job in the past on those trade-ins as well.
Just one more comment. At the end of its life, that cab and chassis has more value than your Chevrolet ambulance does as a whole. Somebody would buy that truck to put, Jeff Story might buy it to use it on the farm, or I might buy it to put a car carrier on. I mean, it has much more use at the end of the town's life than the van does. And Bill, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you had that Ford and it was 10 years old right now, you would have 15 guys waiting to bid on it that would want to buy it in the open market. So it's a smart move, it really is, so. But.
Go ahead, Bob.
I'm just appalled at the cost of this thing. I'm right there with Ronnie, though. The 550 that's what I drive every day, is a 550. And just the opposite. I put the second body on it, and not the new truck under the old body. But I think that's an excellent point to be made. The thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is putting this to a committee. This is an ambulance. It's about as common as a pickup truck. You ought to be able to just buy a stock unit, and without saying, well, we've got to, check this box, we got to check that box, we got to check that box. It's an ambulance, so I don't think that there's a lot of customization needs to be done to that, and I would look for you to drive the cost down a little bit here. I understand that $100,000 for the cab and chassis, and then $300,000 to put the box on it, but in some level, I know enough about mechanics and bodies and trucks, and so I would like to see some conscious effort at a stock truck. You mentioned the Braun, but they're not the only body maker in the States. I would like to see a little bit of homework done, Pierce or some of the other manufacturers, and see what, I would stick with the Ford, though. But I think that,
Really starting to feel the hate here. You're a Chevy owner.
we spent $1 million for a ladder truck that, to me, is you know, a lot more than an ambulance as far as the technology involved, and you know, you're putting a ladder 100 feet in the air, and here we got a truck, a cab and chassis that Ford mass produces every day, and, you know, the body, anyways, I'd like to see some due diligence in that
Don't-
area.
Don't forget, Bob, that that's got some equipment in it that kept you going a month ago.
Yes, okay. Well,
That just-
point taken.
Go ahead, Shirley.
Point taken.
So I was looking for clever questions to ask before this meeting, and I thought I should ask, well, we have climate activists in our community. What about an electric vehicle ambulances? Well, so I didn't have to ask Dan, I got the answer already. The first electric vehicle ambulances only hit the road last year, like 2022, and looks like most of them are just ambulance companies, and they don't look like they are manufactured for where we live. Not yet, anyway. So for those of you out there who might have that question about, you know, we're switching from diesel to gas, why not switch from diesel to electric? They're just not appropriate for here for now.
Thank you, Shirley. Go ahead, Tig.
One thing I think this does address, which is really smart, is we know there's a national EMT shortage, right? That's pretty severe. So if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, Chief, it means that with this system, you can kind of get the person onto the ambulance more efficiently. And if for any reason you had manpower issues in terms of human capital, right? Because you've got, 2 EMTs on staff. And so if for any reason we lost an additional one, that would kind of make it a little bit easier to kind of that system, right? Get people on and off and.
Are you talking the system where you
Evelyn.
slide
Yeah.
somebody out?
Yeah, what I'm getting at is we have a national EMT shortage, and so having more sophisticated equipment is kind of like risk prevention in a certain way. Is my point coming across?
Cut a man,
Yes.
cut a man out of the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
I
trying
don't
to-
think it's
I'm not-
preferred,
I'm
because
not
then you
trying
wouldn't
to
have
cut a man
somebody
out of
in
the
the
job,
back.
But if something,
Right,
you know,
yes,
something.
you can operate it with one less person.
Yeah.
In a crisis.
Yeah, we still have 2 paramedics and EMTs combination sometimes. Sometimes we have 2 paramedics, which is the preferred method. I think the issue is, as the chief referred to in his presentation, that there is a certification that goes on nationally that we have to abide by, but that certification doesn't get into the customization of the cab itself. And we have 8 paramedics that are going to have some input into, you know, where this meter goes, where these types of medicines go. And everything has to be familiar, because when we're taking a patient to the hospital, time is of the essence. And where things are, we don't want people looking to different cabinets and all that stuff. There isn't a
Isn't that
standardization. yet.
standardization, though, across?
There is not a standard yet that basically says, in this cabinet, this thing goes, in this cabinet, this goes. And that's why we have training periods where we do take a new paramedic or a new EMT and get them familiar with all these compartments. But I agree with you. If there was a national standard, that would be great. But right now, Chief, unless I don't know of it, is there a standard for, you know, this goes here, the
But
Zolmeter goes
I
here, this
think
goes
maybe,
here.
Bob, so maybe some good clarity would be, like, when you talk about the customization, is it, I would like these extra, that's what I'm hearing, is it's more about where things are, not what necessarily is in there.
Right.
Like, there is a standard to, like, the equipment you will need in an ambulance. It's not like you're like,
How does it-
instead of 2 blood pressure, I want 8, and I want the fanciest. It's that the blood pressure meter is in this location is what you're customizing. Am I understanding that?
Correct. And because of the change of expectations in the truck now, the seat belts are not just a waist belt, they're a 5-point hitch, whatever it is. I mean, there's a lot of safety things that have been added that are out of our decision, that they're just, it's no different than going and buying a car with all the different safety pieces that are there now. We've gone off the price of what Yarmouth and some of the other towns have done, and we're actually going to be cutting off some of the things that they've got in their budget, just so we can get down to what that number is. And we can do that. It might be a camera that's removed or whatever it may be, but they're, I think Yarmouth's right over 430 for their truck. So we're trying to bring that in as much as we can, but some of it is, like Bill's saying, that we can't control the dimensions of the truck. We don't have, a city might have enough people to sit on both sides in the back of the ambulance in case they're doing CPR. Ours has a much smaller surface area, just because there's going to be nobody there in the first place to do it. So we're trying to make that real as much as we can, but we just want it to be as consistent with the truck that we have. And again, Spencer's got the same tools, so that's the direction that I think is important for us.
Go ahead, Ron.
I think that we would be crazy not to lock in on the price. I ordered a new car carrier a year and a half ago, and they wouldn't give me a price when I ordered it. It's due in 2 weeks. It was due in 3 months ago, and it still isn't here. And they still have not given me a solid price, and it's gone up $30,000 in a year and a half from when I ordered it to what it is right now. So I guarantee you this $425,000 2 years from now will be $475,000. I will guarantee it, so. It's just the industry, the demand is out there. You know, 3 years ago, I could have called up and said, I want a new car carrier, and I could have had it in 2 weeks. Now it takes 2 years. I mean, so.
This is open item for the public. Is there any comment?
Kevin Belvin. I live on Route 9, and I wanted to come and speak about the ambulance or proposed new ambulance. I think it's a great idea. I'm 100% in support of it. Kind of recap some of the things on why we should have it. You asked me about the cab of the truck, trim it down. When seconds count, you want to make sure that you're remembering what piece of equipment is in every ambulance. So it's really important that the IV stuff isn't in this cabinet in this truck and in that cabinet in that truck. Seconds save lives. You know that. We need this because we don't want to get a situation where we put ourselves into where we have to check the ambulance daily to make sure it turns on. The white 108, daily we had to make sure that it turned on. That was from long-term maintenance. We weren't sure every day if it was going to turn on or off every day. Thirdly, why we should not get an EV ambulance. We talk about equity a lot in this town. I really don't want to be a part of resourcing my cobalt from an artisanal mine where we have people using their hands to grab that cobalt. There's no such thing as clean cobalt. So, lastly, you brought up the EMT shortage nationally. That is one of the reasons I came to talk about today. And I'd like to ask why we're artificially lowering our applicant pool. Right now, we're hiring a paramedic firefighter, are we not? I think that's the last thing I saw on the newsletter for the town. We're hiring an EMT paramedic. Right now, according to Maine EMS, if you want to be a medical care provider, you have to have the COVID-19 vaccination. Have to have it. No exceptions, but besides a whole bunch of other things, right? According to the latest study, the latest journal that's going out there, a gentleman named Mark Rupp, who's MD, the current dominant variant going around is XBB 1.15. I believe Jimmy Fallon had a little video about that. Followed by BQ 1.1 with 6.7 cases. The original Omicron variant is gone now. The original Omicron variant, or the COVID-19 variant, is gone. The original shot that Maine EMS requires is for the original variant that is not here. Why are you going along with discriminatory hiring practices? Because any EMT provider that does not.
I'm just going to ask you, so the topic at hand here is about the authorization of a purchase of an
Correct.
ambulance. So
And-
I just for,
Yeah.
I will let you finish
Thank
your comment in the next
Yeah, just
30
wrap it up. Yeah.
seconds, but
Yep.
that
So
would have been more appropriate to come up during the public discussion, because
it would have been, but I didn't want to steal the chief's thunder. The chief should have talked about the ambulance first, in which I want to respect that. So didn't want to do that. So look into it. maybe draft a letter to Maine EMS saying, why is this absolutely ridiculous rule still being enforced? Why are the townspeople not getting the best applicant for the job? Plain and simple. And I'd like to see something drafted up by the town, maybe by the town manager, by the fire department, by our state representative. Somebody needs to say something instead of going through lawyers.
So, Madam Chair, can I interject for 10 seconds?
Please do.
That's already in progress, Kevin. There's a bill in front of the legislature. We are waiting for the public hearing. I will contact you so that you can go testify as well. But Steve Moriarty, our representative, have met with the chief, myself, and with one of the paramedics impacted by the current law of Maine EMS, who has their own rulemaking authority, and who we totally agree with that it's time to stop this, because that's already beyond us. I don't know how successful we'll be, but the council already is aware and has supported that legislation going forward. We are really trying what the next thing is in November, when they're required to have flu shots, or else they can't be a paramedic. We're going to lose even more paramedics. There's over 100 paramedics now on a class action suit against Maine EMS that we're waiting and hopeful that something happens. So we have not been sitting on our hands, nor has the council. We have worked with our legislature and our state representative to draft legislation that should be in front of the committee, I think it's Health and Welfare, in the next couple of weeks. So I'll keep you posted.
Right, and I apologize. I do know there's a lot of back-end things going on, but the public support, maybe the public outreach of saying, hey, this is the current situation we're in, and that this is where we're going forward, because the public doesn't know this.
No,
If
it's
you
not
go and
following
talk to
the
the general
science.
public, they have zero idea.
You're
So
absolutely
maybe
right.
bringing this to public light would help, and probably that would be the better approach that I should have had, so thank you.
Well, that's okay, but the science is not being followed anymore. I can't
Correct.
agree with you more.
Thank you.
So.
That's all I had, and support
Thank
for
you.
that ambulance, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the chief? I will entertain a motion.
I'll give you a
Madam
motion.
Chair,
Oh,
before you go, I think we should add to the motion, I apologize, it's not there, is just the price not to exceed 425,000, because
I
it's
was gonna
kind of
amend that.
open-ended, and I think, after the discussion tonight, I think we're all on the same page.
I move to authorize the issuance of a purchase order not to exceed $425,000 for a new ambulance to be delivered in fiscal year '25.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion?
We let this thing get out of hand for a second, so I can't help but respond to this allegations about what is proper and what is not proper with regards to vaccination and things like that. On the way to work this morning, I had NPR turned on, and they were interviewing a doctor, and they were talking about long COVID. And at the end of the discussion, the doctor was asked, what's the best protocol? And she said, for people who are at risk, vaccination is still the primary source of protection from COVID, as it is with any communicable disease. And I can't help but not sit here and say that, when we abandon science in the interest of allowing personal freedom, we do so at our own risk. It's one thing to say that we can, support personal freedom, having been in the service and stood in a line and gotten my share of shots over the year without any recourse of get in line, get the shot, and move on, soldier, sailor, whatever. Anyways, enough of that. I've had my 2 cents.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. We'll get going on it.
Thank you guys for coming in.
Thank you. 23-021, to reappoint William Longley as Code Enforcement Officer and Dan Small as alternate from April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Third.
I know you have a birthday at home to get to.
I do,
I didn't
guys.
forget that.
Appreciate you. Any questions or comments on the motion? Anyone from the public? Great. All those in favor? Thank you. 23-022, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on a mass gathering permit for the Garden Brothers Circus to be held at the Cumberland Fairgrounds, July 13th through the 16th.
Madam Chair, I move the table.
A second. And
you.
I just looked at that and I laughed and I thought, oh, they figured out that's Clam Festival weekend. Not to have a circus for little kids when they're all sugared up from cotton candy.
All those in favor? Thank you. 23-023, to set a public hearing date of March 27th to consider and act on a liquor license renewal for Louis Grill LLC.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
Questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor? Thank you. 23-024, to set a public hearing date of March 27th to consider and act on amending TIF 8 to construct new affordable housing.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I think this is an important step that we as a council are taking. A year or two ago, we decided that we would form a housing, affordable housing task force. They came back with a number of recommendations. We've also looked at supporting things on our own in the community for our citizens, be they elderly, indigent, emergency housing, but a number of different ways to accomplish things that for those who are less fortunate. And this is an important first step that we're taking. I couldn't be more happy tonight to endorse this.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll be voting against this tonight. I think the whole process, I really commend the Housing Committee. However, I think we missed the boat. We haven't considered what it's going to do to the schools, what it's going to do. We have no information what it's going to do on a tax burden for us, what it's going to cost the town. There are so many unknowns. We talked about, earlier tonight, we talked with the Lands and Conservation Committee about sustainability, being able to feed our own, and yet now we want to add more and more people to the town. So I think in some ways we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. I'm against this, and I'll be voting solidly against all the proposals having to do with these additional housing projects. Thank you.
I will note there's no imminent action or new development at this point. It's just setting the kind of opportunity in the TIF. But I acknowledge everything you just said and appreciate you
Thank
kind
you.
of being upfront on how you'll be moving forward. I will entertain a motion. Or, did I get a motion? No, go ahead, Ron.
Madam Chair, I move to set a public hearing date of March 27th to consider an act on amending TIF 8 to construct a new affordable housing.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving to new business, I'll just hit some logistics, and then, Ron, I'll start with you. So first, just a reminder, Town Council budget workshops will begin right before our next council meeting, Monday, March 27th. They'll run 5 to 7, right before the next three council meetings. So March 27th, April 10th, April 24th, with the culmination being Saturday, April 29th, starting at 8 a.m. in the council chambers until completion. Also, just a reminder that nomination papers are available now and must be returned by April 13th. We have 2 town council seats up for election, as well as 2 school board seats. If you have any questions about what that looks like, please reach out to kind of any of us council members. I know Mike Williams from the school board, Cumberland resident, he would be happy to talk to folks. So Jason Record, so please reach out if you have questions about what serving looks like, what running looks like. Happy to talk to you. Also, just I think we're still on for April 12th for kind of our biannual. Is that twice a year? For MSAD 51 board, the North Yarmouth Select Board and the Town Council will be meeting in the Geiger Room up at the high school, I think is the plan. It will be broadcast and recorded, but this session is really an opportunity that we started a couple years ago that I think we have seen be productive, where kind of all three bodies getting together and kind of having a collective conversation. Picked this timing because we'll all kind of be in a good spot for our budgets, so to kind of talk about what's top of mind and kind of future as well as current state. And then we'll be getting a probably pretty significant update from the school board on kind of their thoughts and plans as far as kind of the status of a new school, as well as kind of their budget and how that's kind of fitting into a longer term plan. So that's what I had for logistics. Councilor Kopp.
Thank you. I'd like to donate my $20 to the food pantry. We received a letter from Shirley's mom, a thank you letter, very well received, and she's entirely welcome. And that is all I have. I am going to disappear out of here because a friend of mine was struck and killed by a car last Friday night, and I have to go to visiting hours, which end at 8 o'clock. So I am going to disappear. And thank you guys all for the kind words. Much appreciated, so.
Thank you for
Thank you.
being you.
Thanks, Ron. So I just want to echo the incredible work and just to thank Mike Schwint, who was here earlier, kind of talking us through the work plans for the Lansing Conservation Committee. Allison really hit on this beautifully, but going to these meetings, I just continue to be astounded by the massive amount of work and volunteer hours that this group just plows in across, forests, sustainability, and trails. On top of that, would like to just do a little shout out to Denny, and there's another grant coming our way, the Casco Bay Estuary Partnership, which is $4,900, I believe, and is looking at kind of the larger health of the coastline in Broad Cove. So that is just really cool. And then also the one thing I think is coming towards us is the textile recycling program, which could start at the beginning of April, I think is a trial.
End of April.
End of April is a trial. We're starting with 2.
At least one. I didn't know about the second one.
Oh, okay, maybe 1. But what's so cool about this is that the organization that takes all of the, clothing essentially sorts what's donatable and what's not. And what's not is that then goes to, it's like the B2B component of their business, but then goes to be recycled and used for insulation. So nothing's going to a landfill. It's either being donated or it's being reused and recycled. So just some really cool stuff coming our way. So that's it for me.
Mr. Vale?
I have nothing this evening.
Mr. Eads?
I'm not going to be responsible for keeping you longer.
There's just a lot of video games happening. It's fun. He's having the best birthday of his life.
Electronic babysitter, right? Just quickly, Princeton Memorial Library Advisory Board meets tomorrow. I missed the last meeting, so I didn't update you, but it continues, the library continues to be your one-stop shop for information about and offerings. They seem to overlap with recreation, and they overlap with sustainability and forestry. They have 3 presentations coming up in conjunction with Lansing Conservation about what you should have in your garden, what you shouldn't have in your garden, protecting the bobolink, those kind of things. So if you haven't signed up for the library newsletter, please make sure you do that. One of the things I noticed, we were talking about EMTs, and one of the things I observed in the legislative bulletin just recently was that the Maine legislature is looking to incentivize people into public safety to become policemen, EMTs, paramedics. I think anything we could do to get behind that and support it in a way that doesn't cost us money. For example, one of the ideas is to give them low-interest loans for housing, much the way what were they, FDA loans, farmers, you could get a farmer's home
FHA.
loan, right? You got a low-interest loan to become a farmer. Well, this would be something similar, which I think is a great idea because it wouldn't cost anybody anything, and it would be a nice, geez, if I could get a mortgage for 1 or 2% while I'm working as a public safety, I think that's a great idea. They're also looking at, covering other costs and kind of things, but I tend to hone in on the things that won't cost us money. Like, I don't want to pay for their, I understand once we've hired them, we need to pay for training, but I don't want to just give them carte blanche, here's your credit card, become a public safety person. But I'm going to try to be in touch with Mark about that and try to stay on top of that, because I think that's a really good idea. It's an idea that's a long time coming. And then finally, very happy birthday tomorrow to my mom, who declares herself old. She turns 90 tomorrow, and that's what she considers old. So, happy birthday, Mom. I know you're watching.
Love it. I have nothing additional to add.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Adjourned.
Okay. Yeah, I'm amazed at what
I don't-
the
I
land
can't think of anybody
conservation
that can
committee
get-
does. They just, they
We need to get someone.
they need to have